Welcome to Biocybernaut. The opportunity today is to learn about the 5 hindrances and the sixth one that I discovered. The 5 hindrances came to my awareness about 2006 when I had in my hand a tiny little book called the Zen Ox Herding Stories. And it identified 5 hindrances to spiritual progress and really to hindrances to happiness and success in life. The 5 hindrances are from the Zen Ox Herding Stories are doubt, drowsiness, distractibility and worry, aversion and any form of ill will, and boredom. And where the list came from, well, it was the distilled wisdom from over 1,000 years of Zen practice in Japan, where you had probably over that time, hundreds of thousands of Zen monks doing the Zen practice, and they and their Zen masters discovering that there were blockages, there were qualities of mind which interfered with the progress of Zen. And they are, again, doubt, drowsiness, distractibility and worry, aversion, any form of ill will, and boredom. And so when I learned of this, I recognized immediately that these were obstacles that the Biocybernaut trainees were encountering as they did the Biocybernaut trainings, which are, as you know, perhaps like an accelerated form of meditation. The brainwaves that are produced, that you learn to produce in the Alpha 1 training, mirror quite precisely the brainwave changes that occur in advanced Zen, which is 21 to 40 years of Zen. And a study done in Japan by two prominent Japanese scientists, Kasamatsu and Harai, wanted to study the brainwaves of Zen meditation. Now, in Zen, there are two main traditions, Soto and Rinzai. This roughly corresponds to, like in Christianity, there are two main traditions, Catholicism and Protestantism. And so Kasamatsu and Harai went to Zen masters in these two traditions and requested, very respectfully, permission to measure the brainwaves of their monks as they sat in Zazen meditation. Permission was granted. Then the scientists further asked the Zen masters to rate their monks for level of spiritual development, which they did, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Typically, beginners had between 1 and 6 years of practice. Intermediate had from 6 to 21, and nobody was rated advanced who had less than 21 years of experience, and some had 40 years of experience. So this is why we say that the Biocybernaut Alpha 1 training is like 21 to 40 years of Zen. And I published a paper in 1993 which documented this. And so since 1993, we have known at Biocybernaut that our Alpha 1 training, it allows you, even if you have no meditative experience, to produce the same brainwaves as if you had done 21 to 40 years of Zen practice in Japan, where they are pretty serious and maybe even fierce about the Zen practice. Okay, so now back to the hindrances. We got them from the Zen ox herding stories, the distilled wisdom of 1,000 years of Zen practice. And since our training is the brainwave change equivalent of 21 to 40 years of Zen, it's only natural that these hindrances would be showing up with people doing the Biocybernaut Alpha trainings. And so it turns out that the hindrances are the tools or the methods that your ego uses to sabotage you and to block your progress in any kind of personal growth. Again, they are doubt, drowsiness, distractibility and worry, which of course includes any form of fear or anxiety, and then aversion and any form of ill will, being grumpy or irritable or angry or full of rage, and then boredom. And so when people in the training would report an experience, I would say, oh, that's the doubt hindrance, or, oh, that's distractibility and worry. You're there in the chamber, doing your work, and all of a sudden your left foot starts to itch. Well, has never done that before. So you look at it and you say, hey, ego, I see you're trying to use the distractibility hindrance on me. Well, guess what? I'm onto you and it's not going to work. So get out of here. Or maybe it's doubt. Like you doubt that you can do this, or you doubt somebody in your life, or you doubt yourself. Or maybe you get drowsy. You had 10 hours of sleep the night before and there you are. Wait a minute. Ego, I see what you're doing. You get out of here. So knowing the tools that the adversary, the enemy of personal growth progress, spiritual progress, knowing the tools that the enemy uses gives you an enormous power over it, because these tools work best like any guerrilla movement. Guerrillas don't do pitched battles with the army of the country. They sneak around in the dark and set traps or attack unexpectedly in the middle of the night. And so the ego is like that. It rarely comes out to fight a pitched battle with your intention to have personal progress, personal growth, spiritual growth. But it'll use these sly techniques: doubt, drowsiness, distractibility and worry, aversion, any form of ill will, and boredom. And so it was very useful. And trainees benefited enormously by having labels for and labels for the things that were hampering them, hindering them, the hindrances, hampering them in their trainings. And beyond that, it allows them to identify the perpetrator of these hindrances, which is their ego, and to call it out, which gives them enormous power over it, because if it can operate in stealth mode or like a fifth column, it's much more effective in sabotaging you and your progress, your success in life. So this was very, very helpful. However, after using the hindrances successfully for maybe a year in trainings I was leading, I began to recognize that there was another hindrance that was operating. And this hindrance was forgetfulness. Now, it wasn't on the list. And so I was a little intimidated, this list of the 5 hindrances represents 1,000 years of the distilled wisdom of Zen practice. Who am I to be coming up with a 6th hindrance for the list? How could the Zen guys, in all their wisdom and brilliance, how could they have missed forgetfulness? And it was so obvious. Let me give you an example. We had a guy in training, an elderly man, whose wife had had Alzheimer's for 7 years. And he loved her very much. Every day he would go to the care center and spend all day with her, even though she didn't know him. And he was loyal, and he was dedicated, and he loved her. And there was anger showing up on his mood scales. Now, you may or may not know that I wrote a computer program that people take while their brainwaves are being recorded, where they respond how much they feel to many adjectives, many feeling words: friendly, clear thinking, sleepy, unhappy, dizzy, angry, whatever. And the computer both scores the moods. And so we have numerical values on different moods, which then people can see how that changes as they learn changes in their brainwaves. But I added into the program the ability to assess the probability of the accuracy of each one of their answers. So let's say the word is anger, and the person puts 0. And the computer goes, I don't think so. And it expresses its doubt in terms of number of sigmas. 1 sigma is a 68% chance that denial is wrong. 2 sigmas is a 95% chance that denial is wrong. 3 sigmas is a 99.7% chance the answer is wrong. It goes up from there. And so this gives the trainer a real advantage in helping the person to discover hidden negative and hidden positive emotions, because the program that I wrote will detect both. And how unfortunate is it if there's a positive quality that you have that you're not aware of? It's like having, $1 million in the bank and you don't know that the account exists or it's in your name, or you could go there and withdraw. And so we want to bring into people's awareness positive qualities that they have that they're not consciously aware of. Similarly, the negative qualities are sabotaging you and your performance. So in the case of anger, the trainer would ask, well, you denied feeling anger, you put 0, but the computer thinks that there may be more to the story. So is there anything you're angry about? And maybe a tear comes out of the eye and lips tremble a little. And then the person gets in touch with and then is able to tell a story about an incident in their life where they were put upon, where somebody used or abused them or lied to them or hurt them in some way. And so then that person goes on to the forgiveness list. And we have a 14-step method for teaching forgiveness, for doing forgiveness. And so the mood scale program is very helpful. And it turns out that the denied items, the negative denied emotions, are often treasured by the ego because it's a way to slow you down. And so having an awareness of the hindrances is incredibly valuable. So here's a man. His wife is in the Alzheimer's care home for 7 years, and he's got all this anger. It doesn't show. I mean, he's on the surface quite placid, and he only talks about how he loves his wife. However, there's all this anger showing up, and it's not just the word angry. It's also enraged and outraged and furious and mad, and all kinds of anger words are showing up, and he isn't aware of what that's about. And this goes on for a couple of days. And so in the morning of the third day, I'm going over his mood scales, and he mumbles something when I'm asking him about anger. I didn't hear it. I said, what was that? And he looked down. He was embarrassed to even sort of mumble that. And I said, no, it's important. What'd you say? And he said, angry at Maud. Maud's his wife's name. And I go, really? Why are you angry at Maud? And again, he hangs his head almost shamefully. And I said, no, it's important. Let's talk about it. And he said, he's angry at Maud for ruining their golden years. A little bit of the story. This couple had never taken a vacation. They saved their money. They were planning to travel the world. They didn't even take weekends off. They worked themselves to the bone to make money and save money so they could have a fabulous retirement traveling the world. Well, then Maud gets Alzheimer's and there's no traveling the world. And our guy is angry at Maud for ruining their golden years. He loves her, but he's angry at her. So I said, oh my God, that's so important. This is like the most important forgiveness that you will do this week. And so go into the chamber today and forgive Maud. He knew what the forgiveness method was at that point. He goes, oh yeah, I can't wait to do it. And so at the end of the day, he comes out of the chamber and we're interviewing in the canopy room, debriefing, and he forgot to forgive Maud. Now, it's like, really? How is this possible? I mean, we made such a big deal out of it. You recognize that this was like the most important forgiveness that you could do in your entire life. Your lifetime wife, and she Alzheimer's 7 years, ruining golden years, and you forgot? And I realized, somehow this is his ego trying to prevent him from doing this good forgiveness work. So I said to the technicians, we're not going to let his ego get away with that. And so the next day, day 4, they put on each side of his monitor and the top of his monitor where scores come up, little post-its, forgive Maud. And they would call in periodically on the intercom to remind him to forgive Maud. And he did. It was fantastic. And after he had forgiven Maud, the biggest deal in his life, he began to experience a pain in his forehead. And it was a third eye opening, a slit opened. And then he said, light came out. And I said, tell me about the light. He goes, it was brighter than the sun. And so in the interview, we made a super big deal out of, oh my God, you did this incredible forgiveness, this greatest trauma probably of your whole life. You forgave it. And then you had this reward of an opening of your third eye. And we spent probably 15 minutes going over it. And then he had some other things that happened in the session. We talked about that. And a little bit later, he goes, now, why did I have that opening? I go, come on, you gotta be serious. You don't remember why? We just talked about it for a quarter of an hour. And he's like, the ego is like choking him and not letting that information out. Well, there were 4 other people in the training. It was a 5-person training. And so I passed out Post-its to everybody and said, now you write down why he had that experience. And everybody immediately took their pen and his ego was like, oh my God, everybody knows. It was like that. And I said, we are not going to go on until you force your ego to stop choking this information out of you. And it took him a minute or two. And then, because I forgave Maud, and everybody cheered and they passed in their Post-its and he was like treasuring it. And so I knew that forgetfulness was a hindrance. And I began using it very successfly, helping the trainees to know that ego would use, in the same way it used the 5 hindrances, doubt, drowsiness, distractibility and worry, aversion, any form of ill will and boredom, it was also using forgetfulness. And that was great. I had discovered a 6th hindrance, perhaps equal in importance to the 5 that came to us from 1,000 years of the distilled wisdom of Zen practice in Japan. But the scientist in me wasn't satisfied with having found a new hindrance and helping people with it. I wanted to know, how did those brilliant and wise and deeply insightful Zen people, how did they miss forgetfulness? How did they miss it? It's so obvious. It shows up in every training. And so for every training that I led from that point on, when I introduced the hindrances, usually on day 2, I would ask, how did those Zen guys miss forgetfulness? And nobody had an answer. And that continued all the way through 2006, through 2007, through the first half of 2008. At the end of, in July of 2008, we shut down the California Training Center and moved everything to Canada. At the time, I believed in global warming and wanted to get further north. And so I had bought in 2006 a large home on 10 acres, and it was being renovated to become a Biocybernaut Training Center where people could actually stay there and do the training. And so I started up the trainings in September of 2008, asking the question, how did those Zen guys how did they miss forgetfulness? And in December of 2008, we had a remarkable man there, Alan Markin, co-founder of Canada's 2nd largest oil and gas company, Canadian Natural Resources, CNRL. And when I asked the question of the group of 5 people that he was in, how did the Zen guys miss forgetfulness? He gave me a 1-word answer, which stunned me, absolutely stunned me, because I knew immediately it was right, very deeply right. The 1-word answer, he said, was mercury, Hg on the periodic table, a liquid metal at room temperature. Well, mercury contamination pervades our biosphere. It was first showed up in the livers of marine mammals like seals and so on that are, top of the food chain. Bioaccumulation was occurring. And mercury causes, guess what? Forgetfulness. Mercury causes forgetfulness, as well as shyness and hair loss and other bad things. Causes nerve cells actually to disassemble. I've seen a movie shot through a microscope provided by Alan Markin, where there's a giant squid neuron growing. You can see the axon bringing materials out of the intercellular fluid, and the axon is literally growing. Then here comes a micropipette, injects some mercury, the growth stops, and then that axon actually begins to disassemble. So I know mercury destroys brain cells and it causes forgetfulness. Okay, so, well, how did the Zen guys miss forgetfulness? Well, because before the widespread burning of coal, which only goes back 200 years and not in all countries, there was no mercury contamination of the biosphere. And so the reason the Zen guys missed forgetfulness, because people weren't forgetful back then. Memory was like a steel trap. This is what we can infer from the absence of mercury in the biosphere when the Zen guys were coming up with the 5 hindrances. Forgetfulness was not on there because mercury was not in their bodies, it was not in their brains, and so they weren't forgetful. And so this tells us that ego is an opportunistic predator. If you have a weakness, maybe your neighbor doesn't have that weakness, your ego will use that against you. And with everybody having mercury contamination, guess what? Everybody exhibits forgetfulness. And ego is quick to seize on it and use it to keep people from doing things that they want to do in the alpha chamber and the theta chamber and the delta chamber at Biocybernaut. And so the 5 hindrances, you will be, as you go through your Biocybernaut training, you will learn the 6 hindrances, the 5 from 1,000 years of Zen practice, the distilled wisdom, and the 6th hindrance, which I have added to the list. These are all tools that the ego uses to undermine you, to sabotage your performance, to prevent, to the extent it can, your personal growth and your awakening into a higher consciousness. And so, armed with this list of hindrances, you can make much steadier, sure, and more rapid progress in your increase in consciousness and your development of personal skills and experience of personal growth. So welcome to Biocybernaut, and welcome to this mini tutorial on the 5+1, the 6 hindrances. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, I'm Tony Robbins. Listen, if you are looking to improve your brain, your psyche, your ability, your emotions, your ability to really maximize your performance, and you want to really dig into your brain, my dear friend, Dr. Jim Hardt, and his Biocybernaut program is extraordinary. I've been through it myself. My wife Sage has, members of my family have, and we found it to be truly extraordinary. But it is not for the faint at heart. Unless you're dead serious about really taking things to the next level, don't bother. We went through the Alpha program designed to maximize your ability to create alpha waves. And it was challenging and it was incredibly rewarding. And I'd recommend it to anybody serious about improving the quality of their lives or including the quality of their family lives as well. So check out Cybernaut, check out Dr. Jim Hardt. And if you do, I think you'll be really, really pleased.
And the entire time you are learning to think and how you think these electrodes create sounds. And you learn how to put yourself in the zone of alpha. But it's a bitch. It's horrible. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody that wants easy experiences, but I'd recommend it to anybody that wants to grow immensely. And by the first day, I'm like, who do I got to shoot to get out of this thing? Oh, it's me. I'm the one that did this shit. Right? But by the end of the week, all 3 of us were able to go into this state of alpha. And if you're familiar with alpha, the best way I can describe alpha is there's no problem that can't be solved in alpha. Because every problem that we have was created by us.
Thank you for being here and absorbing this information about the science of brainwaves and about the stories of people whose lives have been beneficially altered, improved by doing brainwave training at Biocybernaut. And now I'm reaching out to you to invite you to come and be a part of the Biocybernaut adventure. Biocybernauts are to inner space what astronauts are to outer space. So come and adventure with us. And if you'd like to leave a comment on the videos, you can do that, or there's a link you can click if you'd like to learn more. We welcome you to Biocybernaut.